Before we begin, imagine a quiet records officer finding one wrong word in an old treaty file. That single word may decide whether hundreds of human rescuers live or die. This is not a story about fleets, weapons, or war. It is about evidence, hidden truth, and one woman forcing the Galaxy Council to admit what Earth had already earned. The human clerk who found Earth was erased from the Galaxy Council. Audrey Hale noticed the wrong word before she noticed the missing money. The word sat in a dull gray box near the bottom of the treaty ledger, beneath freight duties, emergency assessments, and the newest transfer into the Council Emergency Protection Fund. It was not highlighted. It was not marked as disputed. To most people in the Earth Treaty Archive, it would have looked like another harmless classification inside a system built by older worlds and translated badly for human eyes. Provisional Utility Species. Audrey read it once, then again, without moving her hand from the glass desk. She was 37 years old, a records officer for the Earth Treaty Archive in Geneva Orbital Annex, the civilian station that held Earth's official copies of every agreement signed with the Galaxy Council. Her work was not glamorous. Ambassadors stood under bright chamber lights. Rescue pilots made the news feeds. Fleet commanders had monuments. Audrey checked seals, dates, signatures, fund transfers, death classifications, and the quiet words that decided whether a person counted when a system failed. That cycle, her task was simple. Earth had delivered its newest quarterly contribution to the Council Emergency Protection Fund, and Audrey had to verify that the fund matched the rights attached to it. Earth had paid in equipment, fuel, medical reserve crews, long-range disaster models, and a cash equivalent that could have kept 3 small colonies alive for a year. The ledger accepted the payment. The rights column did not move. Audrey leaned closer. The archive bay around her hummed, with low servers and soft ventilation. Outside the long window, Earth curved blue and bright beneath the annex. Most of the night staff had gone to the lower decks for meal break. Only Marcus, then the archive director, remained in his glass office, speaking quietly to someone on a secure line. Audrey pulled up the status history. Earth had been paying full emergency member assessments for 20 years. Earth had deployed doctors to plague belts, engineers to failing habitats, food ships to famine moons, and search crews into disaster corridors where older member worlds would not risk their own people. The payments were real. The obligations were real. But the status was wrong. A protected member civilization received rescue priority, sovereign compensation, voting protection, and full recognition for personnel lost under Council command. A provisional utility species received assignment requests. Audrey felt the first chill under her ribs. She opened the newest rescue docket and searched for active Earth deployments. One file blinked red before the others loaded. Var Selen orbital collapse. Earth Rescue Contingent, Commander Jonah Reed. 312 Earth responders unaccounted for. Audrey touched the docket. The archive summary expanded into a live emergency feed, and the room speakers clicked on before she could lower the sound. A woman's voice burst through static. This is Mira Dallin, communications specialist aboard the rescue ship North Star Mercy. We have cleared civilian pods from the inner debris field. Repeat, civilian evacuation is complete. Commander Reed is holding the corridor open with manual drives. We are trapped in gray corridor shear. Oxygen is falling. We need council extraction authorization. The transmission broke, returned, then thinned into a high metallic hiss. Audrey stood. Var Selen was a council world, not an Earth colony. The gray corridor was a narrow zone of folded space debris left by a failed orbital gate. If a protected member force was trapped inside it after an authorized rescue, the Council Emergency Protection Fund could open a corridor in minutes. Audrey knew the rule. She had verified it 100 times. A second panel appeared beside the transmission. The panel stated that the request had been denied because Earth did not hold protected member status. Audrey stared at the words until the room around her seemed to go silent. The people in that corridor were not being abandoned because rescue was impossible. They were being abandoned because the wrong box had been checked. She sent the docket to Marcus Venn and walked to his office without waiting for a reply. The door opened as she approached. Marcus was a narrow man with silver hair, careful hands, and the kind of face that always seemed to be deciding how much fear could be shown in public. "I saw it," he said before Audrey could speak. "Then you saw the classification," Audrey said. "I saw a classification conflict." "It is not a conflict. Earth paid full protected member assessments. The rescue team at Var Selen is being denied extraction because the council still lists us as provisional utility." Marcus closed the secure line on his desk. "Audrey, do not use that term outside this room. The council used it first. And if we accuse them of misuse before we understand the record chain, they can freeze every active Earth deployment. Medical ships, relief vessels, food corridors. We have people in 16 council jurisdictions right now." Audrey held his gaze. "We have 312 people in the gray corridor right now." Marcus looked toward the window, where Earth hung bright enough to make the archive glass glow. "Send a formal discrepancy report," he said. "Mark it urgent. I will route it through diplomatic review. That can take days. The wrong accusation can cost us more than days." Audrey wanted to argue, but she knew Marcus was not a coward. He had protected the archive through 3 treaty crises and 2 public inquiries. He feared the council because he understood how slowly large systems punish smaller ones. A member world could shout. A provisional world had to document. "I will file the report," Audrey said. "Nothing beyond authorized channels." She nodded once. Marcus studied her for a moment. "Audrey, I mean that. We are not ambassadors. We are not commanders. We preserve records. Records decide who gets rescued," she said. She returned to her desk and filed the formal discrepancy report exactly as ordered. Then she made a sealed copy of the Var Selen docket, the fund, ledger, and the status history. She stored it in the Annex's old disaster backup, a system built before council integration, when humans still assumed any foreign database could fail at the worst possible moment. As the backup completed, a new access marker appeared in the ledger. Someone outside Earth jurisdiction had opened the same file. Then another marker appeared. Then a third. Audrey watched the status history reorganize itself. Not change, not yet. Just shift, as if invisible hands were straightening a room before an inspection. She copied the old version again. The clock over the archive bay marked the oxygen estimate from the North Star Mercy. 17 hours and 42 minutes. Audrey sat down and began to follow the word provisional back through 20 years of council records. The first pattern took only 20 minutes to find. Earth had not been idle in the Galaxy Council's emergency network. It had been everywhere. Audrey opened mission after mission, and the archive bay filled with quiet windows of human work. Earth medical teams crossing quarantine lines on Marrow's dawn. Earth engineers restoring heat to the Gallon Ring habitats after their fusion banks failed. Earth cargo crews bringing grain substitute to the ice settlements of Havre 3. Earth rescue pilots cut through debris fields after the Keth orbital strike. Earth trauma surgeons trained alien clinics that had never treated human bone, human blood, or human stubbornness, but had learned from human hands anyway. The council records called these contributions efficient. The people saved in those records had called them miracles. But whenever Earth lost someone, the language changed. Auxiliary support loss. Non-member responder casualty. Unprotected external labor fatality. The words were clean. They were almost gentle. That made them worse. Audrey pulled the casualty tables into one stream. Names began to stack down the wall display. Thousands of them. Pilots, nurses, welders, tunnel cutters, atmospheric chemists, ration officers, power technicians, water engineers. Most of them had never stood near a weapon. Most had died doing work older member worlds had asked Earth to do because humans were fast, adaptable, and willing to enter unstable zones before committees finished assigning blame. The Council had accepted the help. The Council had avoided the debt. A new transmission arrived from the Gray Corridor just after the archive bay's lights dimmed for night cycle. The image was broken, but Mira Dallon's face appeared for 3 seconds at a time, pale under emergency strips. Behind her, people moved in slow, careful gestures, conserving air and heat. Earth Archive, Earth Command, anyone receiving. Civilian pods are clear. Repeat, Var Selen civilian pods are clear. We have wounded responders, low oxygen, and manual stabilizers failing. Commander Reed says do not let them write this as unauthorized intervention. We were invited by Var Selen traffic control. We have the beacon record. The signal jumped. Static swallowed half her next words. Tell my mother I'm not scared. Tell her I am working. The transmission ended. Audrey sat very still. It was not the first time she had heard a last message. The archive preserved thousands. Her job required respect, not numbness. Still, this one landed differently because the system was not merely recording a tragedy. It was preparing to misname it. She searched for the beacon record Mira had mentioned. It should have been attached to the Var Selen docket. It was missing. Audrey opened the access trail. The removal request came from a council administrative relay, passed through 3 committees, and vanished behind a seal used by the senior allocation block. She knew that name. Everyone in treaty work knew it. The senior allocation block was not a formal government. It was a voting alignment of old council civilizations with heavy shares in emergency funding, trade corridors, and habitat reconstruction contracts. They did not need to give orders in public. They set procedures. They controlled definitions. They knew exactly which words could move fleets and which words could bury the dead. Audrey requested authority to open the seal. Denied. She requested the denial authority. Denied. She requested the list of civilizations that had approved the seal. A warning appeared on her screen. The warning stated that further access could be treated as hostile record intrusion under council procedural law. Audrey exhaled through her nose. Hostile, she said softly, is an interesting word for reading what we paid for. The archive door opened behind her. Marcus entered with his coat unfastened and his face tight. Tell me you did not trigger a council intrusion warning, he said. I requested the seal authority on the Var Selen beacon record. Audrey, the beacon was removed. Miradalin said Var Selen invited them in. If the beacon stays missing, the council can say Jonah Reed's team entered without authorization. Marcus came around her desk and looked at the wall display. The names of human dead reflected faintly across his glasses. For a moment, his anger drained into something older. I know those tables, he said. You knew. I knew the classifications were bad. I did not know they formed a chain. They do. Marcus lowered himself into the chair beside her. How far back? 20 years. Maybe more. He rubbed his jaw. Then, this is not a filing error. No. Audrey hesitated, then entered one more search. She had avoided it because she knew what she might find. The name came up before she finished typing. Elias Hale. Her father had died 16 years earlier aboard the Earth rescue ship Calvary 9 during a thermal breach near a mining moon called Orist. Audrey had been 21. The official notice had said he died outside protected jurisdiction. She had hated that phrase then because it sounded cold. She had not known it was also legal. His council record opened. Elias Hale, Earth Engineering Auxiliary. Cause of loss. Non-member emergency support event. Sovereign protection, not applicable. Compensation status, not eligible. Audrey felt her hand close under the desk. In her memory, her father was standing in their kitchen in Ohio, teaching her how to read old paper maps because, he said, every system failed eventually and a person should know how to find home without permission from a machine. He smelled of metal dust and coffee. He laughed too loudly. He wrote her short messages from every rescue rotation. Never dramatic, always practical. Water is back on here. People are tired but alive. Do not let your mother throw out the old atlas. Records matter. AUD. People forget when things get quiet. The council had taken his work. It had accepted his death. Then it had written him down as support equipment that failed outside warranty. Marcus saw the record and said nothing. Audrey closed it carefully. How many families got this language? Too many, Marcus said. How many knew what it meant? Marcus did not answer. A public news feed unfolded over the far wall without Audrey calling it. It had been pushed to all Earth diplomatic terminals. An alien broadcaster with silver skin and black ceremonial lenses spoke in a controlled, polished voice. Council sources report that human emergency crews may have entered the Var Selen crisis zone before full authorization. Analysts describe the move as another example of Earth's reckless intervention culture, raising questions about whether humanity is mature enough for expanded council privileges. Behind the broadcaster, the feed showed a human rescue ship entering the debris field. It did not show the civilian pods leaving behind it. Marcus swore under his breath. Audrey, save the feed. They are writing the story before the bodies are cold, she said. Do not say that in public. I will say it in better words. Marcus turned to her. What do you need? That was the first moment Audrey knew he had crossed from fear into decision. Access to the pre-integration archive. The old council import logs. Anything from 20 years ago tied to membership review. Those are not indexed. Then I will read them raw. That could take weeks. We have hours. Marcus looked once more at the oxygen clock. 16 hours and 9 minutes. He entered his director's seal. A hidden branch of the archive opened, old and ugly compared with the smooth council interface. It used human date stamps, human backup names, and archive notes written by overworked clerks who had trusted no one. Audrey almost smiled. The council had built a system to hide behind elegance. Earth had built one to survive bad days. She began to read. By dawn over Geneva Orbital Annex, Audrey had found the first scar in the record. It was not called a membership vote. It was called a provisional elevation review. 20 years earlier, after the Solace Belt disaster, Earth had deployed rescue teams to 7 council worlds within 11 days. Human crews had rebuilt air plants, moved civilian populations, and reopened water systems before the council's own emergency board agreed on a distribution formula. The review file was not empty. It was cut. Audrey could see where the official summary ended too cleanly. The last line stated that Earth would remain in provisional contributor status pending future evaluation. But the file's checksum did not match the length of the original. Something had been removed. She searched the old import logs for missing attachments. One phrase appeared repeatedly. Member Seal Appendix. Audrey froze. The Member Seal Appendix was not a proposal. It was the final instrument used when a civilization moved from provisional status to protected membership. It required 3 validation seals. One from the Council's Central Registry. One from the Funding Authority. One from the applicant's Sovereign Archive. Those 3 seals were the seal chain. The rule was simple. 3 valid seals meant Earth had already been accepted. If the seal chain held, the Council could not call Earth provisional anymore. A secure call chimed from Ambassador Tessa Rourke's office on Luna Diplomatic Relay. Marcus answered it on the wall, but Tessa's sharp eyes went straight to Audrey. Tessa Rourke was in her 50s, with cropped dark hair and the controlled posture of someone who had spent half her life being underestimated by rooms that later regretted it. She had negotiated Earth through trade quarantines, border accusations, and 3 council sanctions threats. Director Vin, she said, why is a records officer pulling sealed membership history while every council channel is accusing our rescue team of unauthorized intervention? Marcus started to answer. Audrey spoke first. Because the accusation depends on Earth not being a protected member. I found evidence that we were elevated 20 years ago. Tessa's expression did not change, but the room seemed to tighten. Around her silence. Say that again, she said. Audrey did. She kept it short. She explained the payments, the classification, the casualty language, the missing beacon, and the member seal appendix. She explained the seal chain in one plain sentence. If Earth had all 3 seals, protected member status had already been granted. She did not mention her father until Tessa asked how far the casualty language reached. It includes Elias Hale, Audrey said. Tessa glanced down, likely reading a note from her staff. Your father. Yes. That gives you a conflict of interest. It gives me proof that the conflict has been harming Earth families for 16 years. Marcus closed his eyes for half a second. Tessa leaned closer to her camera. Miss Hale, I respect the archive, but a partial appendix is not enough. If I accuse the senior allocation block and they prove your chain is incomplete, they will frame Earth as a desperate minor power forging status to force a rescue. We will lose the Var Selen team and possibly every emergency corridor we currently access. If we do nothing, we lose them anyway, Audrey said. Not all losses are equal in diplomacy. They are equal in oxygen. Tessa's face hardened, but not with anger. Audrey recognized the look. It was the expression of someone who disliked a sentence because it was true. Find the third seal, Tessa said. You have until the council schedules its emergency session. After that, we will be defending Earth from a charge we did not choose. How long? The block is pushing for 12 hours. I may stretch it to 14. The call ended. Audrey returned to the old logs. She found the first seal before noon. Council's Central Registry, valid, buried under a translation note. She found the second an hour later. Funding Authority, valid, hidden behind a reclassification order signed by a minister from a senior allocation block. The third seal should have been an Earth Sovereign Archive. It was not. Audrey searched every obvious branch. Treaty intake, sovereign instruments, provisional status, emergency membership, council import, Solace Belt review. Nothing. Then a message arrived through a channel that should not have existed on Earth system. It was text only. Stop searching central records. They were cleaned. Look at witness mirrors. Audrey stared at the sender name. The name meant nothing to her at first. Then a second line appeared. I was 8 when Earth engineers brought heat back to Gala Habitat 12. My mother kept the badge. I work in council archival maintenance. I cannot speak publicly. A file followed. It was small, only an index fragment, but carried a council internal routing path. It showed that the member seal appendix had been separated from Earth's public status file by order of the senior allocation block. The reason code was not security. It was allocation stability. Audrey understood the phrase at once. If Earth became a protected member, the emergency fund would have to treat Earth responders as equal claimants. The old worlds would lose their ability to assign human crews without granting human rights. They would lose cheap courage. A new line appeared from Nalorun. They are not afraid Earth will refuse to help. They are afraid Earth will learn it can say no. Audrey saved the message in 3 places, then deleted the live channel from her screen. She did not want Nalo exposed before it mattered. Marcus returned with coffee she had not asked for. His eyes were red. Any luck? He asked. 2 seals. The third is missing. But a council archivist sent an index showing the block separated the appendix intentionally. Marcus looked at the index. This is enough to prove concealment. Not enough to prove membership. I know. Where else would the third seal be? Audrey thought of old human systems, redundant copies, and rescue crews who copied everything because field conditions turned official channels into rumors. Her father had taught her that habit. Keep a local mirror. Keep a paper map. Keep the record because the record may be the only witness left. Witness mirrors. She opened disaster fleet archives from the Solace Belt era. There were thousands of ship mirrors, most too damaged or poorly indexed to search cleanly. She filtered for vessels present during the elevation review. The list narrowed. One name stopped her. Calvary. 9. Her father's ship. Marcus saw it too. Audrey. The ship received council packets during the Solace Belt recovery. If the appendix was issued to Earth Field Command, a copy may have landed in its mirror. Calvary 9 was destroyed at Orist. The emergency core survived. It was recovered with the remains and stored in family evidence review before transfer to the archive. Marcus was quiet. You never requested it. My mother did. I didn't. Why not? Audrey kept her eyes on the screen. Because I was afraid it would only tell me he died doing his job. Marcus said gently, and now? Now I needed to tell me he kept doing it. The recovered core was in cold storage under a restricted family seal. Audrey could open it as next of kin, but once she did, the data became evidentiary. The council could argue she had altered or selected personal material for political use. The bloc would use that. They would say grief had led a clerk beyond duty. Tessa Rourke said the same thing when Audrey called her. They will attack your motive, Tessa warned. They will say you are turning your father's death into a legal weapon. Audrey looked at the casualty table still glowing on the wall. They already turned it into a legal erasure. Audrey, listen to me. If we take you into the council chamber, you will not be treated like a grieving daughter. You will be treated like a weak point in Earth's case. They will push until you crack. Then don't let me crack. Let me speak. Tessa studied her for a long moment. Why you? It was not cruel. It was the question any ambassador had to ask before placing a civilian in front of hostile governments. Audrey answered plainly. Because a diplomat can argue what Earth deserves. I can prove what the Council already signed. They built the trap out of records and records of what I know. My father is not the reason I found this. He is the reason I understand what it costs. Tessa nodded once. Open the core. I will prepare a lawful evidence chain. Director Vin, witness the extraction. No one touches that data alone. The recovered core arrived by secure vault 15 minutes later. It was smaller than Audrey remembered, a blackened cylinder inside a clear containment sleeve. The label had her father's ship name, a heat-damaged serial mark, and a human recovery stamp from 16 years ago. Her hands were steady when she placed it into the reader. The first files were ordinary rescue data, atmosphere readings, heat maps, crew messages, equipment failures. Then came Council packet mirrors from the Solace Belt Review, stored because Cavalry 9 had served as a relay ship during the emergency. Audrey searched for Member Seal Appendix. One result. The file opened slowly, as if the past resisted being dragged into light. There it was. Council Central Registry Seal. Emergency Funding Authority Seal. Earth Sovereign Receipt Seal. All valid. Attached was a short note from Earth Field Command to all rescue vessels. Preserve local mirror until Central Archive confirms protected membership transition. Under it was a line from Audrey Hale, added as a maintenance annotation. Copy retained. No record counts until it survives the people who want it gone. Audrey covered her mouth with one hand. Marcus looked away, giving her privacy he could not truly provide. Tessa's voice came through the secure line, softer than before. Audrey, do we have it? Audrey lowered her hand. We have it. The file was no longer just history. It was the difference between a rescue order and a death notice. The next hour did not give Audrey the relief she expected. Evidence should have made the room steadier. Instead, it made every person inside the archive understand the size of the danger. A missing file could be dismissed. A damaged index could be argued away. A valid third seal from an Earth rescue mirror meant someone had not merely forgotten humanity. Someone had built a long and profitable silence around it. Marcus called in 2 senior archive witnesses and locked the extraction room. Tessa brought in a remote evidence officer from Luna. Every movement of the Cavalry 9 Corps was recorded from 3 angles. Audrey had to state her name, her relation to Audrey Hale, her role in the archive, and the reason she had accessed the family seal data. Her voice stayed level, but the words cost her more than she expected. She had spent years keeping her father's death in a private room inside herself. Now the door was open, and officials she barely knew were entering with forms and verification codes. She hated that. She also knew it was necessary. The block would try to turn grief into contamination. The only answer was a chain clean enough to survive insult. When the extraction record was complete, Tessa asked for 5 minutes alone with Audrey on a side channel. The ambassador's face appeared smaller on Audrey's desk screen, less formal without the hard light of her office. For the first time, Audrey noticed the fatigue under her eyes. I need to ask something ugly, Tessa said. Ask it. If the Council offers rescue in exchange for silence on the membership record, what do you want Earth to do? Audrey had expected legal questions. She had not expected that one. They might do that. They're more likely to offer a procedural bridge. Temporary humanitarian extraction. No admission of status. No audit. No correction of past records. They save Reed's team and keep the structure intact. Audrey looked toward the wall where the casualty names still waited. Would Earth accept? Some people will argue that we should. They will say living people come first. They will not be wrong. And after that, the Council will call it goodwill. The bloc will call the status question unresolved. The next crew may face the same trap under a cleaner name. Audrey rested her hands flat on the desk. It would be easy for an outsider to mistake the archive for a place of cold choices. It was not. The coldness came from systems that made people choose between the living and the erased. Save them, she said. Tessa's expression shifted. Audrey continued. If they offer a real rescue, take it. But do not trade away the record. Saving Reed's team cannot require us to abandon everyone who came before them. If the council wants silence as the price of mercy, then it is not mercy. It is another contract. Tessa nodded slowly. That is the answer I hoped you would give. It is not the easier one. No one built this because they feared easy answers. Before Tessa could reply, Marcus, open the room channel. We have a public feed problem. The main screen changed to a council news composite. The same silver-skinned broadcaster from earlier now stood before an animated model of the gray corridor. Red lines showed human ships entering before the displayed authorization window. The beacon record Mira had mentioned was still missing, so the animation made the North Star Mercy look like a reckless spear thrown into another world's disaster. A panel of commentators debated whether Earth used emergency work as a political tool. One claimed humans had a cultural obsession with heroic overreach. Another said Earth responders were valuable but emotionally unstable and required senior supervision. The worst one smiled while saying that provisional species often misunderstood the difference between courage and permission. Audrey watched without speaking. Marcus muted the feed. This is spreading through the outer worlds. Archived at first, Audrey said, if they're building a false public record, we need to show the public how it was built. Tessa's voice returned through the channel. Agreed. Capture every broadcast that uses the missing beacon. If the beacon is restored later, the sequence proves coordinated framing. Audrey opened a public pressure folder and began saving the feeds by timestamp. It felt strange to preserve lies with the same care as truth, but lies had architecture. If a person could show when each piece appeared, who repeated it, and which missing file made it possible, the lie became evidence against its makers. A message arrived from Naloran while she worked. They know someone helped you. Internal trace has started. I can delay, not stop. Audrey read the message twice. Nalo is exposed, she said. Tessa answered immediately. Do not answer from the live system. If they trace him because of us, we owe him protection. We will offer it through quiet channels. But if you message him now, you confirm the link. Audrey hated that too. She had never met Naloran. She did not know the shape of his face, the sound of his voice, or whether he had a family waiting behind his silence. She knew only that someone inside the council. Archive had risked his life because Earth engineers once brought heat back to a habitat and a child remembered. That was how systems cracked. Not all at once. One remembered debt at a time. She created an evidence note without naming him. Unidentified council archival source provided index fragment. Protect source pending asylum review. The wording felt thin, but it kept him alive on paper. Sometimes that was the first kind of shelter. A third transmission came from the gray corridor an hour later. This one carried video from inside the North Star Mercy. Commander Jonah Reed had a cut across one cheek and frost along the collar of his pressure suit. Behind him, responders moved through a dim compartment where every breath sounded too loud. Earth Command, he said, we are down to emergency rotation. Medical pods are clear. Civilian count confirmed. If the council feed says we entered without authorization, check Var Selen traffic beacon 14. It called us by name. North Star Mercy did not cross blind. The picture shook. Someone off-screen coughed. Reed turned, listened, then faced the recorder again. If this reaches Audrey Hale at Treaty Archive, Mira says you will know what to do with logs. I do not know you, ma'am, but if you're the one reading the record, write this clean. We stayed because leaving early would have crushed the last evacuee chain. That is all. He looked away again. His voice lowered. And if they call us reckless, tell them reckless is running into danger for glory. This was not glory. This was math. More people lived if we stayed. So we stayed. The signal ended. No one in the archive moved for several seconds. Audrey saved the file, then attached it to the Var Selen chain. The story now had a human face, but she resisted the urge to build the case around emotion. Reed had given her something more useful than a plea. He had given her the logic of the decision. More people lived if we stayed. That was the sentence the council would have to answer. Marcus came back to her desk with a fresh procedural alert. His voice was low. The block filed a pre-session motion. They want all Earth evidence from local mirrors excluded as sovereign. Contamination. They know we found the third seal. Or they guessed where it would be. Audrey read the motion. It was elegant. She had to admit that. It did not deny Earth had records. It argued that local Earth mirrors could not be trusted because Earth had an interest in changing its status. It demanded that only Central Council archives count. A perfect loop. The Council archive had been cleaned, so only the cleaned archive could be trusted. Audrey opened the seal law again, this time reading past the membership clauses into evidence standards. Her eyes caught on an old provision from the Council's early expansion era. Sovereign mirrors were admissible when central records had a demonstrated break in chain. The rule existed because old member worlds had once feared exactly what Earth faced now. They had protected themselves from central manipulation, then forgotten smaller civilizations might need the same shield. She copied the clause. Marcus looked over her shoulder and let out a tired laugh. They wrote the rope. Yes, Audrey said. We just have to show them where they tied it. At that moment, every screen in the archive turned red. A council procedural notice filled the wall. It stated that Earth was summoned to an emergency session of the Galaxy Council. The charges included unauthorized intervention at Var Selen, hostile pressure against council rescue procedures, and unlawful access to protected administrative records. Attendance was required within 2 hours. Mira Dallin's last oxygen estimate blinked below it. 4 hours and 11 minutes. Audrey looked at the clock, then at the Cavalry 9 file. Until that moment, she had been a records officer inside a quiet archive, following proof through hidden systems. She was used to glass desks, silent servers, and documents that only mattered after someone asked the right question. Now, the record had to leave the archive with her. The people inside the gray corridor would not survive a normal review. If Audrey stayed in her proper place, Commander Jonah Reed, Mira Dallin, and the North Star Mercy crew might die inside a classification error. The evidence would decide whether they lived or died. She stood, gathered the sealed chain, and prepared to face the council in person. The council chamber did not look like a courtroom. That made it more dangerous. It was a vast circular hall suspended inside the diplomatic shell of Orzen Gate, a station built at the neutral crossing of 8 major trade routes. Tiered platforms rose in rings, each holding the delegation of a member civilization. Some stood in water columns. Some rested behind pressure glass. Some hovered in low-gravity bays. Translation lights moved like pale insects above the center floor. Earth's platform was small, temporary, and placed below the main voting ring. Audrey noticed that before she noticed the cameras. Billions were watching across council space. The Var Selen crisis had become public entertainment, political theater, and moral test all at once. News feeds had spent hours calling human crews reckless. Senior worlds demanded discipline. Smaller worlds stayed quiet, waiting to see which way power would move. Ambassador Tessa Rourke stood beside Audrey as their shuttle ramp opened onto the lower platform. Remember, Tessa said quietly, they will try to make you defend your emotions. Do not defend the chain. I know. They will interrupt. Then I will repeat the record. They will insult your rank. Audrey looked across the chamber at the high central dais, where High Adjudicator Var Selen waited beneath a silver council seal. Rank is not evidence, she said. Tessa almost smiled. Good. The session opened before Earth reached its seats. Var Selen was tall and narrow, with ash-colored skin and a voice that carried without effort. He had the stillness of someone who believed procedure was a weapon only old hands knew how to hold. Earth delegation, he said, you are summoned to answer for unauthorized human activity in the Var Selen collapse zone and subsequent interference with council administrative systems. Present your representative. Tessa stepped forward. Earth presents Ambassador Tessa Rourke and Records Officer Audrey Hale of the Earth Treaty Archive. A murmur moved through the chamber. Not loud, but enough for the translation lights to flicker. Minister Sorrel Van of the senior allocation block rose from a platform of dark blue stone. He had a smooth, handsome face and 4 long fingers resting on a rail of polished metal. His species spoke through a throat membrane that made every sentence sound almost musical. A records officer, he said. Earth brings a clerk to a sovereignty session. Some delegations shifted. A few did not hide their amusement. Var Selen looked down at Audrey. Records Officer Hale may stand at the technical witness station. The representative platform is reserved for recognized sovereign speakers. Tessa's jaw tightened. Audrey touched her arm once. Then she walked to the lower witness station. It was not designed for dignity. It was a narrow half-circle below the main floor, where translators, analysts, and evidence handlers could answer questions without entering the center of debate. From there, Audrey had to look up at everyone. That was fine. Archives were usually below ground. Var Selen began. Commander Jonah Reed's human team entered the Var Selen collapse zone before final council authorization. Their current distress, while regrettable, does not create emergency obligations for the council under protected member law. Earth lacks that status. Audrey pressed one hand to the station panel. That is the error I am here to correct. Van Lighed softly. Errors are corrected by offices, not by theatrical summons. This error is killing people. The chamber quieted. Var Selen's eyes narrowed. Records Officer Hale, you will confine your statements to verifiable filings. Yes, High Adjudicator. She opened the first display. Not the appendix. Not yet. A ledger appeared above the chamber, translated into every council script. For 20 years, Audrey said, Earth has contributed to the Council Emergency Protection Fund at the rate assigned to protected member civilizations. These are Council records, not Earth summaries. Lines unfolded in the air. Worlds, dates, missions, outcomes. She kept her voice steady and plain. She did not let the numbers blur into grandeur. She tied each category to consequence. Earth medical teams restored quarantine care on Marrow's Dawn. Earth engineers reopened the heat grid on Gallon Habitat 12. Earth food carriers supplied Havre 3 during its crop failure. Earth rescue ships entered the Solace Belt after council routing delays. She let the chamber read the next column. Earth responders died in these missions. Their losses were not classified as protected service. Van lifted one hand. Earth was compensated through contributor agreements. Audrey opened the casualty table. Names filled the air. These are human dead from council-requested emergency actions. The compensation column reads, not eligible. The sovereign protection column reads, not applicable. The service recognition column reads, auxiliary. Minister Van, if contributor agreements paid this debt, show the chamber where. Vans tu wat membro honestilid. Var Selen intervened. The question before this chamber is the Var Selen incident. Var Selen is the current consequence of the same classification, Audrey said. Commander Reed's team is trapped after completing an evacuation requested by Var Selen Traffic Control. The beacon record was removed from the active docket after the rescue. A new display appeared. The missing beacon request. The removal trail. The senior allocation block seal. Delegations began speaking among themselves. Van's voice sharpened. Earth obtained sealed administrative routing through unlawful access. Earth obtained a copy of an action taken against an Earth rescue docket, Audrey said. If the Council claims a right to use Earth responders, Earth claims a right to know why their authorization vanished. You're not a legal advocate. No, I am the person who found the file. A few translation lights paused before rendering the sentence. It landed more heavily than Audrey expected. Var Selen leaned forward. Records Officer Hale, do you claim Earth holds protected member status? Yes. The chamber stirred again, louder this time. On what basis? He asked. Audrey opened the member seal appendix with only 2 seals visible. Van smiled before she spoke. That told her he knew the file. He knew exactly how incomplete it looked. 20 years ago, Audrey said, after the Solace Belt emergency actions, Earth underwent protected membership elevation. The member seal appendix was the final document for that elevation. It required 3 seals. 1 from the Council Central Registry, 1 from the Funding Authority, 1 from Earth's Sovereign Archive. She paused long enough for the translators to finish. 2 seals remain in Council accessible history. The third was removed from the Central Archive. Van stood fully. Then by your own admission, your evidence is incomplete. Earth has entered this chamber with a damaged document, grief, and ambition. The word grief was deliberate. Audrey felt Tessa watching her from the Earth platform. Van continued, "We are aware, Miss Hale, that your father was among the human losses you displayed. The block respects personal pain. We do not accept it as a sovereign instrument." Audrey let the chamber hear the silence after his sentence. Then she said, "My father's record is one of many. If you want him removed from the table, the pattern remains. If you want my grief removed from the room, the ledger remains. If you want Earth removed from this chamber, the seals remain." Van Smede folded. A warning flashed at Audrey's station. Incoming message from Gray Corridor source. Tessa saw it too. High Adjudicator. Earth requests permission to play live rescue audio. Var Selen hesitated. He could refuse, but the chamber was watching now. Public sympathy had not moved fully, but curiosity had. Procedure did not like curiosity. It made rooms harder to control. "Granted," he said. The audio opened. Commander Jonah Reed's voice came through weak and rough. "This is Reed. Civilian count confirmed clear. We are holding manual stabilization because if we release, the outer corridor may collapse on the last medical pods. We have injured. We have low air. We are not requesting reward. We are requesting correct classification of the mission. My crew entered under Var Selen Beacon Authority. Do not let them write us down as trespassers." His breath rasped. "And tell Earth Archive the North Star Mercy kept full local logs. Humans keep receipts." The signal cut. For the first time, the chamber did not fill the silence quickly. Audrey felt something move in the room. Not pity, recognition. Smaller delegations were checking their own histories. Worlds that had been saved by Earth crews were remembering names they had not been asked to remember. Van sensed it too. "A dramatic message does not create membership," he said. "Nor does a partial appendix. The senior allocation block moves to suspend Earth testimony until a forgery review can be conducted." There it was. Delay. 4 hours of oxygen had become less than 2. A forgery review would last weeks. Var Selen looked ready to accept. Audrey opened the final file. "High Adjudicator," she said. "Before you rule, I submit the third seal." The chamber lights flickered as the file entered council validation. Van's face changed so quickly that even species without human expressions could understand it. The seal appeared above the chamber. Earth's Sovereign Receipt Seal. Valid. Source, Cavalry 9 Rescue Mirror. Audrey did not look at her father's name when it appeared in the metadata. She kept her eyes on the chamber. "The third seal was not forged," she said. "It was preserved in an Earth rescue ship mirror. Council Systems issued the appendix to Earth Field Command 20 years ago. Cavalry 9 retained the local copy under emergency archive rules." She drew one slow breath. "My father was an engineer on that ship. He did not know he was preserving Earth's place in this chamber. He only knew records should survive the people who want them gone." Var Selen said nothing. Audrey continued before he could take control back. "The member seal appendix proves Earth was elevated to protected member civilization. The central record was later separated. Earth continued to pay member obligations. Earth continued to provide emergency service. Earth continued to lose people. The Council continued to accept the benefit while denying the status." Van struck his rail with one long finger. "This is an outrageous interpretation from a minor archive functionary." Audrey turned toward him for the first time. "Minister Van, your own internal routing note describes the separation as necessary for allocation stability. You did not hide Earth because we were unqualified. You hid Earth because full recognition would make human courage expensive." The words traveled through the chamber like a pressure wave. Audrey opened Nalo Ren's index, with the sender identity protected but the routing intact. Then she opened the block's internal category map. Utility species. Emergency partner. Non-voting contributor. Auxiliary sacrifice category. She did not explain too much. She let the terms sit long enough to become ugly. As she translated them into plain speech. This is the structure. Earth could be asked to come. Earth could be asked to pay. Earth could be asked to die. Earth could not vote. Earth could not claim rescue priority. Earth could not claim protected service for its dead. A delegation from Gallon Habitat rose. Their speaker was small, wrapped in breathing silk. Gallon recognizes Earth engineers in our heat restoration. We were told Earth declined membership advancement. Another delegation rose from Marrow's Dawn. Marrow recognizes Earth Medical Service. We were told Earth remained under review. A third spoke from Haver 3. Then a fourth. Not all were brave. Some spoke only one sentence. But each sentence widened the crack. The public feed shifted. Audrey could see it on a side monitor. Reckless humans became Earth responders. Unauthorized entry became disputed beacon removal. Clerk became records officer. Var Selen struck the chamber tone. Order. The chamber settled slowly. The high adjudicator looked older than he had at the start of the session. Records officer Hale, he said, the authenticity of the third seal is under live validation. Yes, if accepted, it creates severe procedural consequences. It corrects them. If rejected, Earth's claim collapses. No, Audrey said. If rejected without cause, Council's seal law collapses. Every translator paused. Tessa Rourke's hand tightened on the edge of Earth's platform. Audrey opened the seal law. She had saved this for the end because it was not emotional. It was worse. It was structural. The member seal appendix uses the same validation chain used by senior allocation block treaties, emergency fund guarantees, and sovereign corridor rights. If the Council declares this valid chain invalid only because it names Earth, then every treaty built on the same chain becomes contestable. She looked at Van, including Minister Van's own emergency allocation authority. Van went still. Audrey looked up at Var Selen. So the Council has two lawful choices. Accept its own seals and activate protected rescue for Commander Reed's team, or deny its own seal law and reopen the status of every senior treaty that depends on it. Earth is prepared for either record. The chamber did not erupt. That would have been easier. Instead, it entered the kind of silence that comes when powerful people discover the floor beneath them is part of the evidence. The validation light over the chamber turned white. Seal chain confirmed. Var Selen closed his eyes once. When he opened them, he did not look at Van. He looked at the rescue clock. By authority of confirmed protected member status, he said, each word forced through procedure, the Galaxy Council activates emergency extraction for Earth rescue personnel in the Gray Corridor. Audrey did not move. She wanted to. She wanted to breathe, or sit, or think of her father, or let her hands shake. She did none of it. The extraction had to happen first. A live feed opened above the chamber. The Gray Corridor appeared as a field of torn light around broken orbital structures. Council rescue gates unfolded at the edge. For several long seconds, nothing came through. Then the North Star Mercy emerged, scarred, venting vapor, surrounded by smaller rescue craft. One engine failed as it cleared the corridor. A Council tug caught it. Human responders in pressure suits moved inside shattered compartments. Some were standing. Some were carried. The feed found Commander Jonah Reed strapped into a manual drive chair, conscious but barely. Mira Dallin's voice came through the rescue channel, thin but alive. Earth Archive, she said, tell them the corridor is clear. Tell them we kept the logs. Audrey lowered her head for 1 second. Around the chamber, delegations watched the humans they had called reckless being pulled out of the place where they had stayed to save others. Before Var Selen could move to the next procedural item, a priority request flashed from the Var Selen provisional government. Their delegate had not spoken all session. Until then, Var Selen had let the senior allocation block describe the crisis for them. Now, their platform lit from within, and an older woman with a cracked translator collar stepped into view. Var Selen confirms traffic beacon 14, she said. The North Star Mercy was invited. Our local control tower sent the call after our own emergency fleet failed to launch. We did not speak earlier because our relief loans pass through senior allocation channels. That silence was our shame. The human crew did not trespass. They answered us. The sentence moved through the chamber with a different weight than any legal clause Audrey had offered. Records could prove a structure. Witnesses could show who had been afraid inside it. Another platform lit. Nalo Run did not appear, but the Gallon delegation entered a short protected statement from an unnamed council archival worker. It confirmed that the member seal appendix had been marked for separation under allocation stability review, not security review. Var Selen tried to delay its entry. The smaller worlds objected before Earth had to. For one rare minute, the chamber stopped being old powers arranging language and became a room full of civilizations remembering what they had survived. A water-breathing delegate from Marrow's Dawn said Earth nurses had stayed in flooded wards after the council evacuation quota ended. A stone-skinned representative from Haver 3 said human cargo crews had delivered food through debris storms when insured carriers refused. None of them spoke long. Their statements were not speeches. They were corrections. Audrey listened and understood that the ledger was no longer only Earth's. The truth had moved from archive to memory, and memory was harder to reseal. Van demanded that the witness statements be separated from the ruling. His voice still carried elegance, but the chamber had begun to hear the fear beneath it. "This is emotional contamination," he said. "Emergency law cannot be rewritten by gratitude." Audrey answered from the lower station. "No one is asking gratitude to rewrite law. We are asking law to stop erasing the people gratitude remembers." That was the last time Van tried to dismiss her as a clerk. Var Selen ordered the witness statements attached to the emergency record. He did it stiffly, with visible reluctance, but he did it. The order mattered. Once attached, the statements could not be removed without a public procedural vote. The bloc could still fight, but it would have to fight in the open. Tessa leaned toward Audrey and whispered, "That may save Nalo." Audrey did not look away from the chamber. "Not may. It has to. We will request protective standing for the source after session. Use my name if you need to." Tessa's eyes flicked toward her. "They already have enough reasons to target you. Then one more honest reason will not change much." Then try to speak. No one yielded the floor. Var Selen issued the second ruling under visible pressure from half the chamber and half the galaxy. The Council Central Registry will amend Earth's status to protected member civilization pending full restoration of the separated appendix and review of unauthorized administrative interference. Tessa stepped forward. Earth rejects the word pending. The seal chain confirms the status. The amendment is not a grant. It is a correction. Audrey looked at her then. For the first time that day, Tessa sounded not like someone managing damage, but like someone letting Earth stand fully upright. Var Selen held her stare. Then he said, "Corrected status will be entered immediately." The chamber's central display changed. Earth. Humanity. Protected member civilization. No applause came. The council was not built for applause. But across the tiers, smaller delegations stood in their own ways. Some rose on legs. Some brightened their water columns. Some lifted hands, tendrils, or light crests. It was not celebration. It was witness. Audrey remained at the technical witness station. Var Selen looked down at her. "Records Officer Hale, your submission has been accepted into the emergency record." "Not all of it," Audrey said. Van's head snapped toward her. Var Selen said, "Explain." Audrey opened the casualty ledger again. The names returned, thousands of them, filling the space above the chamber. Elias Hale was one line among many. She did not enlarge it. "Status correction without record correction preserves the injury," she said. "Every Earth responder classified under auxiliary non-member loss during the concealed period must be reviewed. Every family denied protected recognition must receive an amended service record. Every world that requested Earth emergency aid must receive the corrected ledger. And the Council Emergency Protection Fund must be audited outside senior allocation block control." Van found his voice. "That is beyond the scope of this session." Audrey answered before Var Selen could. The rescue was not beyond the scope when you needed humans. The deaths were not beyond the scope when they lowered your costs. The records are not beyond the scope now. Tessa Rourke stood beside her at the lower station, leaving the representative platform empty behind them. Earth formally enters those demands, Tessa said. As a protected member civilization. That phrase changed the room again. It was not a request from below. It was a claim from inside the system. Var Selen did not grant everything. He was too much a creature of the council for that, and Audrey respected the truth of institutions even when she hated their cowardice. He ordered an independent audit. He suspended senior allocation block control over the emergency fund during review. He ordered the Var Selen beacon restored to the record. He required corrected status for Commander Reed's team immediately. It was not justice completed. It was justice made impossible to bury. For a system as old as the Council, that was a wound that would not close quietly. Minister Sorrel Van left before the session ended. His platform withdrew in a shadow with no formal farewell. Audrey watched it go and understood he was not finished. People like Van did not vanish because one record exposed them. They retreated into committees, budgets, procedural delays, and future traps. But he had lost the thing he valued most. He had lost the ability to pretend Earth was useful without being equal. The session closed after 6 hours. Audrey walked back through the access corridor with Tessa and Marcus, who had arrived by relay shuttle in time to witness the ruling. Her legs felt strangely light, as if her body had not yet received permission to be tired. Tessa stopped near the shuttle doors. You understand what happens now. The audit will be ugly, Audrey said. The bloc will blame Earth for humiliating them. Some worlds will call us opportunists. Others will search their own ledgers and find similar things. The Council will spend years pretending this was an isolated procedural failure. It wasn't. No, Tessa said. It was a business model. Marcus looked at Audrey with something like pride and sorrow together. The archive will need a new review division. Good, Audrey said. I was going to ask if you would lead it. She thought of the names, the tables, the families who had received cold phrases instead of recognition. She thought of Miradalin saying she was working, not scared. She thought of Jonah Reed asking only that the records say why his crew stayed. Then she thought of Audrey Hale's note. No record counts until it survives the people who want it gone. I will, she said. They returned to Earth under a quiet dawn. The Geneva Orbital Annex looked unchanged when Audrey entered the archive. The same long glass. The same low server hum. The same night staff pretending not to stare at her and failing completely. Someone had left a cup of coffee at her station. Someone else had placed an old paper atlas beside it, though she did not know who in the building had found one so quickly. Audrey touched the cover and almost smiled. Then she opened the correction queue. The first file was Commander Jonah Reed and the North Star Mercy crew. Their mission status had already changed from unauthorized intervention to protected emergency service. Their rescue was recorded. Their beacon was restored. Their wounded were listed as protected responders. The second file was Miradalin. Alive. Injured. Protected service. Audrey let herself breathe. Then she opened the historical table. Thousands of names waited. The council chamber had forced the galaxy to see the truth, but the archive would have to repair what the chamber could only expose. Line by line, family by family, mission by mission. She also opened a new file for people who were not human. Nalorin would need a protected source petition. Var Selen's tower crew would need defense when the bloc called them disloyal. The smaller worlds that had spoken would need copies of the record before anyone could pressure them to revise their statements. Audrey understood, then, that victory in a chamber was only the loudest part of repair. The quieter work would begin afterward, before the old powers found softer words for the same old harm. She did not begin with her father. That would have made sense emotionally, but not structurally. The archive worked by date, by chain, by mission. Personal grief did not get to rearrange the evidence. Her father had taught her that maps mattered because they kept a person honest when fear wanted shortcuts. She began with the oldest concealed mission from the Solace Belt. One by one, she changed auxiliary support loss to protected service pending final family notice. She attached the corrected council authority. She flagged compensation review. She sent notice to Earth Family Affairs. Hours passed. The world below turned from dawn to day. At last, near the end of the first batch, she reached Audrey Hale. For a moment, Audrey did nothing. The old record remained on the screen. Audrey Hale, Earth Engineering Auxiliary. Non-member emergency support event. Not eligible. Not applicable. She opened the corrected form. Audrey Hale, Earth Rescue Engineer. Protected Emergency Service. Recognized sacrifice under council member authority. Family notice required. Audrey did not cry then. The feeling was too large and too old for tears to know what to do with it. She simply sat in the quiet archive and listened to the servers keep the record alive. Marcus came by once, saw the screen, and left without speaking. Tessa sent a message from Luna. Council registry confirms Earth's status correction across primary index. Public statement in 1 hour. Rest when you can. Audrey read it, then looked back at the name. She typed one final note into the internal audit log. Correction entered by Audrey Hale, Earth Treaty Archive. Source chain confirmed. Record restored. She saved it. Outside the window, Earth filled half the sky. Not provisional. Not utility. Not a species borrowed for dangerous work and dismissed when the bill came due. Earth was not safer because the council had become kind overnight. It had not. The old powers were still old. The committees would still delay. The language would still try to soften harm until no one could feel it. But something had changed that could not be undone quietly. The galaxy had seen the ledger. It had seen the rescue. It had seen a woman placed below the chamber floor use the council's own records to lift humanity into the place it had already earned. From that day forward, when the Galaxy Council called Earth useful, someone could ask whether useful meant equal. And somewhere in the deepest systems of the Council archive, beside the corrected seal of civilization that had been hidden for 20 years, a new line appeared. Humanity. Protected member civilization. Status corrected by record. Audrey Hale returned to the quiet archive where almost no one in the galaxy would ever know her name. She had not commanded a fleet. She had not threatened a war. She had not asked the Galaxy Council for mercy. She had simply opened the record. And in that record, Earth was no longer a useful tool hidden in the margins. For the first time in 20 years, the galaxy was forced to write the truth. Humanity had paid for its place. Humanity had earned its voice. And Earth would never again stand before the stars as something less than equal. If this story stayed with you, please take a moment to like the video, share it with someone who enjoys powerful science fiction, and subscribe to the channel for more stories about Earth, humanity, and the moments when the galaxy finally learns what humans are truly made of. Your support helps these stories reach more listeners. Thank you for listening, and until the next story, keep your eyes on the stars.